Hi class, welcome to lesson 10 in ecology. Now we're going to start examining how humans impact the environment around us. In this lesson, we're going to focus on the water cycle. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to correctly define the basic vocabulary terms associated with the water cycle to include collection, evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and transpiration. You should be able to illustrate a labeled diagram of the water cycle, and you should be able to describe the positive and negative impacts humans have on the water cycle. Make sure you're taking notes. Let's get started. So water is really important. On Earth, materials or anything that is made up of matter, which is made up of atoms, will be recycled. That's because matter cannot be created or destroyed. Matter cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be rearranged from one form to another. Energy, however, will not be cycled through an ecosystem. That is because energy, when it is transferred, is lost. Now, the total energy is still the same, but the usable energy goes down as it is transferred through food chains and food webs. Water is a very important abiotic factor, or a non-living factor that affects all living things. Water makes up about 70% of the human body. Water also covers approximately 70% of the Earth's surface. Water is unique that it is the only natural substance that is found in all three solid, liquid, and gas phases on the temperatures that are commonly found on Earth. Water is unique because its solid form ice is actually less dense than its liquid form. That means ice floats. Water is a really important substance that can store a lot of heat. So water is instrumental in regulating temperatures across Earth. Now, before we look at the water cycle, we have to look at how water changes. In the water cycle, we always have the same substance, water. Water does not change any of the bonds, but instead it changes how closely each of the particles is arranged as it undergoes phase changes from solid to liquid to gas. When we look at these phase changes of water, you are likely familiar with terms such as freezing, changing a liquid to a solid, and melting, changing a solid to a liquid. You're probably also familiar with vaporization, changing a liquid to a gas, and condensation, changing a gas to a liquid. But there are two additional phase changes that water sometimes undergoes. The phase change of sublimation occurs when solid water turns directly into a vapor without ever passing through the liquid state. Sometimes water sublimes. The opposite of sublimation is deposition. When water deposits, it goes straight from the vapor form to the solid form. Biotic factors interact with water as water is essential for all living organisms. Some ways in which living organisms interact with water is through elimination. So when organisms produce waste, much of this waste may include water. All organisms undergo cellular respiration, both plants and animals. When organisms undergo cellular respiration, they produce water and carbon dioxide. Transpiration is a very unique process to plants. Transpiration is when plants release water from their pores in their leaves called stomates. Transpiration is the driving force that allows water to flow up against gravity into plants. Without transpiration, plants would be unable to carry out photosynthesis. Many organisms also must intake water, whether that is plants intake water through their roots or animals tend to drink water. Water is an important component of the cellular respiration and photosynthesis cycle. Photosynthesis uses the water that is exhaled by organisms in cellular respiration and is given to plants so that they can undergo photosynthesis. Plants use the water in photosynthesis to produce glucose, which all organisms use for cellular respiration. Notice how this is a continuous cycle. This continuous cycle requires the continuous input of energy from the sun, but the water is just recycled from organism to organism. Most of you know about the water cycle. The water cycle tends to begin with evaporation. Water can evaporate from the ground or surface water. After water evaporates, it will condense into clouds and eventually fall as precipitation. All precipitation is fresh water. So as water is evaporated from the ocean, only water and none of the salt is accompanied in this precipitation. Now, water is often evaporated from bodies of water and returned to the same body of water through precipitation. But we know that weather systems are moving, so water can also fall onto the surface of the land. When water falls onto the surface of the land, it can infiltrate the soil. Once in the soil, plants are able to take up the water, or the water can continue to percolate through the soil and enter underwater aquifers, where we can find groundwater. Groundwater moves under the ground and usually moves to surface bodies of water, such as lakes and streams. The water cycle is a cycle because no water is added or removed from this cycle, and instead, the water is just changing phase from solid to liquid and gas. Now, water in the water cycle can move at different speeds. Water in a cloud may change phases in a week or so, while water that is part of a glacier may be present in that glacier for thousands of years. Transpiration is a really important part of the water cycle. Let's watch a video about transpiration.
How do water and minerals get to the leaves? Although roots can exert a slight upward pressure, it is evaporation of water from leaves, a process called transpiration, that moves water molecules and ions up from the roots. Transpiration exerts a pull that is relayed downward along a string of water molecules from leaf to root. Hydrogen bonds cause water molecules to stick together, a phenomenon called cohesion. As each water molecule evaporates, it pulls on the next water molecule and it pulls on the next. This relays the pull of evaporating water molecules all the way down to the roots. The adhesion of water to walls of the xylem cells helps to keep gravity from pulling the water molecules back down. As each water molecule escapes from the leaf, it pulls a column of water molecules upward. Solutes are transported along with the water. Thus, the plant's xylem uses the movement of evaporating water molecules cohesion, and adhesion to draw water and dissolved minerals from the soil into its roots and upward to its leaves. Hot, dry, windy conditions increase transpiration. If not enough water moves up from the soil to replace the water lost to evaporation, the plant will wilt and it could die. How does a plant prevent excessive water loss? An opening in a leaf is called a stoma. Stomata are generally open during the day to allow carbon dioxide into the leaf, where it is used in photosynthesis. While the stomata are open, water moves out of the leaf by transpiration. This allows the plant to move water and minerals to the leaf, and the evaporation of water also functions to cool the plant. If hot, dry conditions require the plant to conserve water, guard cells close the stomata. This is a trade-off. Although closing the stomata reduces water loss, this also slows down photosynthesis and may cause the plant to overheat.
This concludes our lesson on the water cycle. Make sure you've taken good notes and bring any questions you have to your teacher.